Right.
To me, that doesn't add up, you know? Because I remember a few times in my life when I was passed out drunk at college and I didn't get up till 3 p.m. You know, and I don't know. I just find that suspicious, and I think that kid I think he knows more than what he's saying, you know?
Yeah,
and I don't even know who he is. I don't even know who he is, so.
Yeah, you know, and I you know, the answer is, I also was involved one time tangentially when I was practicing in a case, though, where, and I know this, you know, there was this truck driver who was getting off 81 and killing people randomly. And someone was on the phone talking to a friend, and boom, she just got killed, you know? And everybody's like, well, what happened? And of course, the first person, the husband, you know, they're sure he did it because there's no, you know, some woman was on her back porch in the middle of the night and her throat got slit while she was on the phone with a friend. Well, it must have been the husband, right? Because who kills you? People that know you. He swears up and down he didn't do it, but boy, they were hammering him, you know, just hammering him. And then sure enough, the guy gets caught shortly after that up in Connecticut. And they link him through the DNA back to this crime scene from her blood being on this knife that he has. And then the husband's, of course, happily cleared, right? But here's the deal. So your wife is killed. And while your wife is killed and you're mourning the loss and you're trying to comfort your children, you've got the government screaming at you that you must have killed somebody. Because why? Well, because who kills people? People that know them, the people who are last around them, the people, you know, with access to them. Except every once in a while, it is a total psychopath who pulled his truck off the highway so he could sneak through the neighborhoods with a knife to, quote, hunt people, end quote. You know?
Yeah, and I guess that's always a slim possibility. But like I said, I spent a lot of Friday and Saturday nights in Palmyra. I think the likelihood of that is very, very low. And I just find it interesting that the night she disappeared, the police came back twice, and they were there earlier in the day for drinking and stuff. That when they came back the second time, you know, the neighbors heard what sounded like foot stomping or whatever the paper said. You know, like there was some kind of stomping or something, and that's why they called the police the second time. And nobody answered. There was no sign of a struggle, nothing. It almost seems like Courtney might have left with somebody she trusted or knew, you know?
Well, yeah, and that's the most logical explanation, mainly because of what was left behind. In fact, based on what was left behind, it's more than you would even leave behind usually with somebody you know. I mean, who leaves their cell phone behind in this day and age?
Right. Unless you want to run away. But the likelihood, no offense to Courtney, I don't know her, but the likelihood that if she wants to run away and disappear, most people aren't smart enough to pull that off, or eventually they're going to come home and give up. You know what I mean? So I don't buy that theory either, that she ran away on her own or whatever. I think that's the probability of that is very low too.
Yeah, and even when people have, even when people have committed serious crimes or tried to disappear, you know, one of the jokes is if you want to catch the perpetrator, just hang around their hometown long enough, because even if they're trying to get away, they can't stay away.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. Well, what do you think about Snowden, by the way? Patriot?
I was just going to say that. Well, I watched some of the interview with Brian Williams, and I'm undecided, but I will say this. I find it very interesting that a lot of people, when you talk to them about, like, the spying and the FISA court and how John Roberts is the sole overseer of the FISA court, they don't like it. Right. But then there's a poll now that came out on NBC News. On the flip side of that, the majority of people don't support what Snowden did. So what that tells me is that while people don't like the spying and all this stuff, they don't like the way that Snowden handled it.
Right. Which, of course,
so my question is, would have he had an alternative way to do the same outing that he did? You know what I mean?
And the problem is, here's the problem. If he doesn't leak the documents to the press, right, then the government just says he's another crank who made it all up. So he steals so much stuff that his credibility is proven, okay? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's part of the problem. He steals so much stuff that he has to do that so his credibility is proven. At the same time, he knows that the congressional committees are compromised because, hell, the head of the NSA is lying to them and they don't care, right? And the administration's lying to the courts and nobody cares. So I think he found himself in a position where in his mind he goes, I can't go through the Intelligence Whistleblowers Act, which says go to these congressional committees, because the congressional committees are obviously not doing their job and rubber stamping stuff. We also learned that some of those people on those committees knew that he was lying, right? But they let him lie because I guess they thought it's okay to lie to the people to maintain security, which is completely wrong. Unfortunately, rather than lie, you could just agree, like, we want to address that matter in a public forum, or if that question came up and the guy could say, I can't answer that. I can only answer that in a classified briefing. But they didn't want to say that. They just wanted to lie. Well, what's the purpose of lying? The purpose of lying is to mislead.
Now, I wonder if he could have released all this anonymously to a journalist.
Right, and he might have been able to do it, but I think by going with his identity, one of the things that Snowden says he asked for, and he says I can't enforce it, but part of my agreement was that none of the media outlets would release any of this information without vetting it with the government first to make sure that it wasn't going to compromise anybody's safety or security. So unlike Bradley Manning, who just sent the documents to WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks basically tried to cull them a little bit, but maybe not necessarily, and of course dropped those diplomatic wires and embarrassed us terribly. Snowden went through this. Was it Grell? Was the guy's name? Glenn something, and got an agreement from them that they would not just drop this information, that they would vet it. And so the U.S. government has had back and forths with the New York Times and the other newspapers to say, okay, we realize you're going to publish it, but please don't push this portion in or whatever. And so I think to Snowden's credit, at least at one level, he did protect it,
Right. I think Snowden, I think pragmatically he's in trouble. I think there's I don't see the Obama administration giving him a pathway back to America. I don't really see any politician giving him a pathway back. I wouldn't be outraged if they did, but I just see no way that he's going to come home scot-free and they're just going to let him go back into society. In fact, if I was Snowden, I'd be a little paranoid that when Ryan Williams did the interview with him, how does he not know that the U.S. government is tracking where he is and they're just going to try to assassinate him? I mean, I don't know if they do something like that or not.
Well, he was worried about that, and they didn't really talk about that, but initially that's one of the reasons why when he put that information to the press's hands, he wanted to get it into encrypted, but into multiple persons' hands, because he wanted it clear that he couldn't be assassinated and the problem goes away. Right. And I think they almost were all worried about that from the beginning because, people go, oh, well, they might listen, under Nixon, good old what's his face, who's the talk show radio host these days. I'm trying to remember which one of the guys from the Watergate era. Oh, G. Gordon Liddy, right? I mean, G. Gordon Liddy's like, yeah, we were going to assassinate this reporter. We had worked out that what we were going to do was crash a car into the side of his car and make it tumble because every day he drove a certain way to work, and we could make it look like a car accident but have like a zero survivability accident, And that was the Nixon era, right? But I'm not naive. This goes on in all different administrations, and the difference between the president's guys killing off a reporter they don't like and the NSA or the CIA or some other secret spy agency killing off a reporter they don't like is even more plausible. You know what I mean? Because they know how to.
I guess in their rationalizing, they're saying, like the NSA would say, well, we do have to get it approved in our secret FISA court with Justice John Roberts, but why does he sign off on all this stuff then?
Right. Well,
why doesn't somebody say, hey, you can't just get a whole batch of information without a specific warrant? You know?
And the way they're revising this new statute, by the way, the way they're revising this statute to trim the NSA data collection, the definitions, the way they're redoing it basically is going to be distinction without a difference. So there's not going to be any meaningful reform per se unless people keep pushing on it. And unfortunately, in the modern era, people are more and more willing to give up freedom in exchange for this concept of security.
They are. And I've noticed a lot of people I know, even Republican friends of mine, they're quick to really defend the Patriot Act. I mean, they aren't. I mean, I'm somebody that it makes me uncomfortable, because it's growing more and more, and it started with the Patriot Act and the FISA Accord, and, the Constitution was written in a time when we didn't have email and internet, so how are we going to apply it to the internet? It's not easy, but I just feel like it's starting to get more and more and more, and there's a lot of spying going on. I'm not surprised we spy on other countries and leaders because we don't trust them. We don't really trust too many people anyway. But I think at least they need to put stiff safeguards on the domestic spying side of it. If they didn't do it on the international spying side of it, I wouldn't be as outraged or mad,
Yeah, but of course the NSA takes the position, and they have been taking it in their court paperwork, that you lose all expectation of privacy when a communication leaves the United States. And that's kind of concerning too, because it's like saying, well, we're only going to apply. It's like saying basically your email's protected in the United States, but everybody else in the world can't get the same level of privacy. Yeah, or how about this? How about you go to England, right? And I shoot you an email while you're over in England, and you fire one back under their theory of privacy because the communication has left the continental United States. We no longer have any Fourth Amendment expectation of privacy in it.
Right. Kind of a technicality, basically.
Yeah, and that's basically what they're saying is once you've now let's talk about what that really means, though. Okay, what portion of the email and how? Because I'll give you another example. Let's say you're in San Francisco and I'm in Maine, and I email you. There's no guarantee that email merely traverses the United States.
Right.
My main internet connection might fire it over to a Toronto server, and part of the packets may end up in a server in northern Mexico somewhere before they reassemble back magically. Now, is that always going to happen? No, but could they take the position that once some portion of your email, or if the body of your email, or some deep packets, 10 packets, 1 million packets, 80% of the packets left to another country and back, you lost your expectation. But that seems to be the way they're asserting it. And, would I say, well, let's trust them, right? But we know that they lie. So once they say, well, we're only going to do it when this happens, what's to keep them from, to be sure they're really telling us the truth?
Yeah, and I think one thing for me is when people get all mad and they're like, well, why do we want to extend constitutional rights to people in Guantanamo Bay? We should be trying to extend constitutional rights to everybody in the world along with privacy rights. Because if we really believe in the rights that we have here, why wouldn't we want every human to get them in every country?
Well, actually, that, my friend, is a really, really, really deep thought here for a minute. Because we're running around the world, especially under the last Bush, but also under Obama, saying, we're going to democratize the world. We're going to push for democracy. We're going to push for freedom. And you're right. One way would be to say we're going to extend the bounty of America and the freedom of America. We're going to treat everybody as if they were a citizen for purpose. But then what my law and order Republican friends say? Oh, well, they don't deserve it. They're not citizens.
But that's like saying only American citizens deserve inalienable human rights, and all humans aren't created equal.
Well,
you know what I mean?
And I'm sure one of them would point out to us that God just wants to punish those heathen people. And I always like to point out to them, well,
we have a lot of heathens here, though.
Yeah, I know. And I always like to point out, so when you were born, you picked your parents' religion, because that's usually what religion you end up practicing, at least at first.
Right. Well, and that's like saying that if you're born in America, you're special, and everybody else, you're worthless in the eyes of God. But one other point I wanted to make, Carl, because I think this is more concerning almost than the privacy issue. There was a ruling. A lot of people love the Megan's Law. Right?
Yes.
They're like, when there's a sex offender, they want to track them, they want to do all this. There was a court ruling up in Alaska. It was Doe v. Alaska, I think. And it was basically a guy that was convicted of rape 30 years before Megan's Law was created, right? So so he did his time, he was out, and the Alaska legislature or whoever created a law that said now he has to register. But he challenged it and said, hey, you can't apply this statute retroactively to me and punish me, right? Because of ex post facto, right? So he goes to the federal court and he wins, right? And then it gets taken to the Supreme Court by the Attorney General or whoever, and the Supreme Court overrules that and says basically because it's not a punitive punishment, right, meaning tracking on Megan's Law or, anything like that's not a punitive punishment, ex post facto doesn't apply because they are trying to say that, only punishments, you can't make retroactive laws, and punishments mean jail, probation, house arrest. So that means that the government retroactively could make any kind of civil sanction they wanted up, like, you have to set a curfew for you, or you have to have an orange-colored license plate, or you register on a website, and they could create anything and apply it retroactively. Well, is that true?
Well, let me go back. First of all, Smith v. Doe was early 2000s. Okay, so it's like it's more than 10 years old now.
Right. And
the court was not unanimous. I know that, but it was a pretty good majority. But here's the thing: what they basically said is that where a statute is not supposed to be punitive, it's supposed to be civil. Okay,
right.
That you have to look and see if the punitive effect outweighs the civil regulatory scheme. I mean, that's the general gist. And what ended up happening is the court said, well, there's some punitive nature to this, but it's not strictly punitive, and it's outweighed by the public's need. Interesting point. What's happened now here in Pennsylvania is we now have under SORNA a stronger registration law that's much more punitive. Okay. And it has all kinds of restrictions and bad things in it that didn't exist. So when the Alaska law was decided, this was all before the Adam Walsh Act came into being and before it required the states to impose these much stronger registration requirements, okay? So the courts are now redigesting it because what they're now saying is the laws have become much more punitive than they were. And so even though the legislature says it's a civil scheme and it's a civil remedial legislation, you still have to look at its actual effect. So some people believe that some of the laws that have been passed since the Adam Walsh Act, including Pennsylvania's, may run into a problem where the logic in Smith v. Doe doesn't apply. So I think it's Smith v. Doe. Yeah, that's the Alaska case. That logic does not apply because it's now sufficiently punitive to overcome the presumption that it's civil remedial legislation. But everybody loves to hate a sex offender, including judges, and there's a lot of inertia against overturning these kinds of laws. I always said if you were in the CIA and you wanted to, earlier I was telling you how G. Gordon Liddy had that plan, was talking about this plan to kill this reporter. In the modern era, you don't need to kill him. All you need to do is just put some child pornography on his computer, get the police an anonymous tip, and let them find his laptop and ruin him for life.
But I guess my point is people should be concerned about a case like that because couldn't the court now with that ruling basically say, well, if you got a DUI or if you got some other offense like a theft, now we're going to create a registry because you're a danger to society and people in Walmart that you might steal to the employers.
Judges have historically, when it comes to what they call civil remedial legislation, allowed things to happen that if the legislature had simply said it was criminal legislation would not be allowed to happen. This is a backdoor that our judiciary has refused to shut. This is a backdoor that, frankly, is influenced by the fact that judges sometimes are a little out of touch with the general population in the sense that, I'll give you an example. I had a case one time that I argued in front of the Commonwealth Court years ago, and the judge said, I don't understand it. We have so many of these appeals. And I wanted to say, because you're taking their driver's license, and you're killing their livelihood, and therefore the regular guy who will take his medicine and do 30 days in jail can't afford to lose his license for 5 years under this regime. And, you know, you're basically, leaving him destitute for 5 years. So he's going to fight it because they had like thousands of these appeals filed when the law had changed a few years back. I just remember the judge saying, "I don't understand. We have all these appeals on this." And you want to be like, yeah, because it just strikes the average man as fundamentally unfair to destroy his livelihood
well, yeah,
with his civil
A
consequence.
punishment, I guess where I would disagree with them is ex post facto says you can't make a retroactive law.
Right.
They're saying, well, if it's not a punishment,
then
you can.
Then there's no ex post
facto. To me,
facto.
all those civil sanctions are punishments to me.
And that's why I say when I say judges are a little out of touch, it depends when they finally look at it and go, you know what, this isn't fair. This isn't not punitive. This is in fact punitive. You've got to get the judge over that hump.
Right.
Now at the federal level, you can at least have some solace knowing that the judges may eventually do that for no other reason than they believe that to be the case, because they're there for life. Here in the state, where judges are up for election every 10 years, how would you like to be on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court judge majority, that a judge who writes in your opinion that the Pennsylvania Megan's law is unconstitutional because it's more punitive?
Right, you might as well retire now because you're not going to get reelected.
Well, I didn't say that, right?
But yeah, you didn't say it. But technically, I guess if you go by the Constitution, a lot of those things, and to me, punitive is taking away gun rights forever. I mean, I would even be okay with a sanction of no gun rights, but the fact that they take it away forever on a misdemeanor conviction, how do they get away with all this stuff? You know what I mean? Where are all these people? Where's the outrage? It's like people are asleep at the wheel, or they just cherry pick the issues they follow.
Well, there's two problems. Number one, the world's too big for all of us to police everything. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And the government's big enough these days that it can police all areas. So it's hard to be vigilant against it. We have to trust other people to, we have to trust the NRA to protect the Second Amendment. We have to trust the ACLU to protect the First Amendment. We need people like that. We need lone wolves who are fighters. We need guys like Mark Cuban out there fighting with the SEC, who are willing to put their money behind it. On the other hand, a lot of our population is no different than the human population throughout history. Give them some bread and give them a circus, and that's all they care about, and they're happy enough. There's really only two people that are uninterested in politics, and those are those that are either completely sated with middle class bourgeois luxury, or those who are too busy, trying to earn a living to survive. And that leaves very few people who have the time, money, or mental inclination to worry about this stuff and to think more long term. I mean, one of the criticisms often bandied about Republicans and conservatives when it comes to global warming is, we only think about the present, we don't think about the future. We don't worry about the future heritage. But that's human nature in general. You can talk all you want about 100 years from now, but most people at the end of the day just want to know where their dinner is going to come from a week from now. Yeah.
Well, no, yeah, that is human nature, and that's a whole nother topic to get into.
Yeah, I agree. My friend, you are a great caller, so I want you on the regular rotation.
Do not be I'm on your Facebook. I'm always posting on there, debating with all the people on there that are the WHP 580 crew.
I got on Facebook. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of good people on there, and I'm not going to bust on them.
There's a lot of opinionated but good people.
Yeah, but I love sometimes when they get going, and you can tell then 2 or 3 guys will slug it out for go back and forth for 30 or 40 posts and just blow up a thread.
But that's good though, because it is good to duke it out. It is good to have the speech rather than close it down.
Yeah, and I actually think, and I firmly believe this. I mean, I've seen some really interesting, debates. So, by the way, if anybody else wants to join us, it's 717-916-5189. I can remember to say that every once in a while. 717-916-5189. But we've had some really good debates on Facebook where I think, if the guys arguing haven't convinced each other of something, they've definitely convinced a few other people, or at least educated people about the issues. I used to post a lot on Penn Live. I don't so much anymore, but I used to post under my own name, and I always said, when you post under your own name, you got to be a little bit more careful about what you say, or at least you got to stand behind what you say, whereas the anonymous people can just throw stuff out there.
Right, they can say anything.
But on Facebook, hey, you posted, it's yours, you own it. And I always like sometimes when I see people, they may be like, I don't care. This is not a popular position, or I've got a few mildly racist guys on there, and I like when they get going with each other, and then of course one of my African American friends will chime in, and then the whole thread goes downhill for a while.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think I've been in a couple of those.
Yeah, and you're like, you really just, hey, dude, that's your name. First of all, you create. Well, but then again, maybe he's just trying to angle for a $2 billion sale for a sports team.
But I think on Facebook, people kind of vent. Like, I know where I work, and I'm not going to say where I work at, but people will state their opinions. They do it a little bit more subtly than people do it on Facebook. But you can always tell if you can read words right, what person, what party they are, what they believe in. And it's just funny to watch some people, and then other people, they don't get involved in it at all,
Well, and for every person who comments on one of your posts, there's about 1,000 others that have looked at it and sort of just lurked. There's the lurkers who read everything on Facebook but never post. And I think there's as many or more of those folks than there are prolific posters.
I mean, I remember when you used to go on Durgan, and I used to sit there just pulling my hair out because, Durgan would have one explanation, and you would give him the right explanation, and sometimes he just couldn't follow it, I don't think, but you'd give him the legal explanation, and he'd just want to strangle you.
You're off in the weeds. You're off in the weeds.
Yeah, but everything, I think, I have an uncle who's pretty conservative, and he's got a lot of views, and, I mean, he's probably a racist. I mean, he drops the N-bomb all the time. And
that's a good hint.
Yeah, that's a good hint. That'll do it. But it's not so much, it doesn't really offend me when somebody says that. People need to stand behind whatever they believe in. They could say whatever they want. I don't really care. I don't want to silence everybody. I just want people to be seen for who they are, But,
well,
yeah, it's interesting.
That's the other joke. I mean, let's go back to this Megan's Law list for a minute, okay? The actual level of recidivism amongst sex offenders is not like 98% like the public thinks. It's not to mean that some aren't prolific and some don't recidivate, but the level of recidivism is not, isn't even 50% or 40% or 30%. I think it's like 10 or 11 or 12% or something like this. But what that really means is, since recidivism rates are not astronomical, what you create is a list of false hope, because when some mom or dad looks on the computer and goes, okay, those are the 5 houses in a mile of my house where a registered sex offender lives. What does that mean? It means what? I'm not going to let my kid play with those strangers? So what does that mean about the other people around my neighborhood? What, that they're not registered sex offenders, so they haven't been caught yet, or they haven't done it yet? Or they're never going to do it. But it gives me no actual information. If recidivism rates were like 98%, at some point you'd go, okay, this scheme makes a lot of sense. But this is sort of like the stranger danger. Yeah, stranger danger, you should worry about strangers, but you're most likely to be abused by, raped by, killed by, shot by someone in your family or circle of friends,
Right.
Quit worrying about the old man that lives down the street and worry about your 8-year-old hanging out with some 14-year-old boys down the street, because that's the potential perpetrator is the 14-year-old, not the 48-year-old sex offender 5 houses down.
Yeah.
But hey,
I will say, by the way, because I am hated now by the Tanger outlets, I am a believer in global warming. I know there's a lot of debate whether it's man-made or from solar flares, but I work at Tanger outlets. I'll say it. I don't care. I work there, and I'm not going to say where though. And they have a law in Derry Township. I don't know if you know this, that you have to recycle. Right now, recycling. I've always made the case on your thread that recycling, the conservatives should pick up recycling and run with it, because you can recycle and really reduce CO2 emissions, And even if you don't believe in global warming, it's still a benefit for conservation, right? And it doesn't involve government. You don't need government to do it, right? In Derry Township, they have a law that if you don't recycle, you can go to jail for 30 days and you have to pay up to $1,000 fine, right? So when I was working at the Tanger outlets, they pulled recycling, right? Now, keep in mind, this law was passed by Republicans. It wasn't some left-wing socialist group. Derry Township, pretty conservative township, right? They love zoning, they love laws, and they love control. So I go to the township board and I say, hey, Tanger just got rid of recycling, but what is the law? What is the ordinance? I got a copy of it. It says, hey, you have to recycle or you go to jail. You can go to jail if you're a private citizen. I said, well, why does Tanger not have to do it? They said, well, they should be. So now Tanger has to recycle, and the mall manager wants to kill me.
Right.
But I will say, in defense of me, the recycling is free, and it doesn't cost them a cent. It's automatically in with their waste haul. So they got rid of it for no reason. Why would you do that? That's kind of dumb.
I guess maybe so you can just throw everything in one dumpster so you don't have to think about it. I don't know. Now, and I'll toot Walmart's horn here for a minute. They have one of the best and biggest recycling programs in the country.
They have gone green in the last decade pretty solidly.
And one of the things that they do, they actually started reworking their food dates and things so that, and this is another government regulation where you talk about things just getting, common sense is overrun by technical regulation. So, you want to give something to the food bank and the yogurt says it expires on May 1st and it's May 2nd. You're not allowed to donate it and they can't take it because it's expired. Mm-hmm. So Walmart couldn't donate. They want to hold the product till the day it sells. But they still want to donate it if possible. But realistically, you'd hold it till the day it was supposed to sell. If it didn't sell, you got to junk it because you couldn't give it away. So what they've done is identified products where it's possible to remove them from the shelf with just a very short window and actually get them donated to somebody so they can accept them. Because interestingly, of course, once you pick up the yogurt that's no good on after May 1st, you can still keep it in your soup kitchen until May 8th and pull it out of the refrigerator and feed somebody because that's okay. You just can't take it while it's expired was the issue. So
you have to take it before it expires.
Right, but then you can keep it through its normal shelf life or whatever.
So why don't they just all donate it the day before it expires?
Well, that's what they started coming up with. But from a business standpoint was they still want to hold the product till they can sell it. So what they came up with was a system to remove things very rapidly and get them through that very narrow window. And then for things they can't do that with, they now they compost all their fruits and vegetables and food products that they can't do that with.
Right.
So really, they're now like one of the single biggest composters of grocery products and produce in the country, which everything Walmart does, they become the single largest of. It's like being the McDonald's when it comes to burgers.
I guess my point was I found it interesting in a township like Derry Township, they would actually make a law where you could go to jail if you didn't recycle. Because we talk about government control. I think the Derry Township Board is controlled by Republicans. I know they have very strict zoning. Do you remember when they wanted to bring in that strip type of club in there near where Shane's City Limits is, or whatever that is?
Yeah.
And they fought that tooth and nail. So a lot of people will run around and talk about freedom and they don't want government control. But then when somebody comes in with an idea they don't like, they're like, well, wait a second. We do want some government control. We want to control this and this, but not that. You know what I mean?
My criticism quite frequently is that people will gladly bash government over something, but then be the first person in line to ask the government to solve their problem or their issue.
That's true. I've seen that a lot in my everyday life.
Yeah, and so you have to decide what the appropriate role of government is, and once you've done that, you have to draw a line, and anytime you have to draw a hard line, or anytime you try to draw a hard line, you create inequities. And so, the right answer is, I don't know. I don't know what the balance should be precisely, because there's times when government action is necessary. There's nobody else that's going to do A, B, or C. On the other hand, once you let them do A, B, and C, it's not too long till they want to do D, E, and F.
Right.
And the bureaucracy starts adding their own. We live in a system where everybody forgets we vote for congressmen and we vote for presidents, but none of us vote for the guys who make the proposed regulations that go in the Code of Federal Regulations. Those are all done by the administrative agencies that are unelected.
Right, the regulatory. Yeah, and it's like, it was funny because we just had a race down here in Lebanon County that was Maury Gingrich versus John Dissinger. John Dissinger was kind of like the Tea Party candidate. He was from the Lebanon City Council. Maury Gingrich, I'm sure you heard of her. She's been in the State House for years now, right? And she was attacking, or Dissinger was attacking her for taking a state pension, saying, hey, that's big government, it's taxpayer dollars. But then his wife was turning around as a judge and getting the same exact state pension. So it's like, why don't people call these people out on this stuff,
Well,
but if you read the mailing ads, you would have thought that Maury Gingrich takes this pension and John Dissinger is standing strong and he's against taking a taxpayer-funded pension. But his wife gets it, so he's still going to benefit. Yeah, he didn't take it himself, right? So his ad didn't lie, but it isn't totally truthful either, in my opinion.
Right. I didn't take it. My wife did.
Yeah, I didn't take it. My wife did. Well, yeah, you're telling the truth. You didn't take it, but you're married, you are as one, so you're still going to get the benefit of a state pension, Well, and it's just stuff like that. I wish there was more fact-checking on it.
We see that quite a bit with, small business people, for instance, will quite frequently have one person in the family who works for a municipality or a county, and they go in there and they work and they get the health insurance and the benefits package. So
and they ride on the government coattails. So then they turn around and slam government.
Right, and then the other person's out there, working as a quote, true patriot, independent business person, not buying health insurance for their employees because they don't need it, because they get it through their wife or husband's plan. And I hate to say it like that, but I'm aware of many small businesses that run like that, where there'll be one or two principals and they're married and their spouses have the benefits through the large organization or government entity that they work for, and that's part of the normal course of business. And they don't need benefits, so therefore don't extend benefits.
Right, exactly. You're right, my friend.
All right.
I've seen that a lot. So.
All right, well, we're going to get you on the regular rotation. I will be on Wednesday night from 7 to 9, and then, of course, next Sunday, 6 to 9. Although I'm toying with moving it around and doing 3 2-hour shows instead of, so it'll be 6 hours instead of 5 hours, but we can chop it up.
Well, hey, if I disappear, Carl, in the meantime, somebody from Tanger Outlets assassinated me.
Right, that or the kid.
Even though I didn't pass the law, I just want to remind everybody that.
Yeah, that
I didn't make the law.
That's you or the guy from that's them or the guy from Palmyra that got you. One of the two.
Yeah, the guy from Palmyra, yeah. All right, take care, Carl. Stay out of trouble, buddy.
Thank you very much. I'm trying.
All right, see ya.
Yeah, okay. So let's get you guys here on the air. We've had a really good long call there, but that's the beauty of this new format. See, this isn't the talk radio you were raised on. This is talk radio. What do I mean by that? Well, it means we can actually, when we have a good call and we got some interesting topics to cover, we can free range. We can pick each other's brain. People can listen in and hear what we're saying. They can chime in. 717-916-5189. Again, 717-916-5189. This is your chance to tell the world what you think. This is part 2 of our show. So if you're listening to this, there is a part 1 for tonight, which is June 1. But this is part 2. We roughly broke at the hour and a half point, not on purpose. I don't know exactly why it broke, but we lost our connection, and then we just reestablished it as a second show, which is what I was kind of planning on doing anyhow. It just happened to do it all on its own. So now we have a second half here. So again, if you're just listening to the second half, you want to hear the first half, we got a lot of good information in there. Because you're just joining me, we talked about Donald Sterling, and we talked about all kinds of things with the Tea Party. Yeah, exactly, Robert. No more traffic and weather. In fact, this is the other nice interactive thing here is I can type back and forth on Facebook while we're here. And, of course, somebody just posted, Robert did, no more traffic and weather. That's right, no more traffic and weather. I actually thought about calling this show, and I told somebody this. I was going to call it No Traffic, No Weather. They're like, it's not really a good name. I'm like, no, really, I think it is a good name. No traffic, no weather. Regular talk radio listeners will get a kick out of it and understand it, because quite often, anytime you're like listening to good talk radio, it gets, it's weather on the 4s. It's traffic and weather on the 4s. What is that? That's 4, 14, 24, 34, 44, and 54. But remember, we still got to cram 12 and a half minutes of advertising in there. So for an hour of talk radio, you're lucky if you get 42 minutes, which is 18-minute discount. You're lucky if you get 42 minutes of actual talk. And I would suggest if you pay attention, sometimes it's as low as like 38 minutes in an hour that actually dedicated to the show. That can drive you nutty, because if you're trying to get through a topic and you're listening to people, it gets chopped up. And that's why I like this long format, because 3 hours on here is really 4 hours, 4.5 hours of regular talk radio in terms of the amount of time I've got to fill. That allows us to get a little bit more in depth. And I enjoy, Chris, who we just had on, just had a great in-depth, and I debate with him sometimes on Facebook. We don't always agree on everything. But he's a regular debater on there. And we get a lot of good discourse going, and I think a lot of people learn a lot of things. I know I've learned a lot of things reading the posts that people post, and I've also learned a million things talking to callers over the years. So if you want to get here on the radio, it's 717-916-5189. What I'd ask you to do, if you get a chance, go to the Spreaker panel and share the show. I want to build a little bit of an audience here, so I'm going to shamelessly ask you to share this show with as many of your friends or family as you can. It has a podcast as well, so as soon as we're done here, Spreaker automatically turns this into a podcast. So if you can't catch me next Wednesday, let's say from 7 to 9, and you want to listen to it Thursday at work, or you want to download it as a podcast into your iPad so you can listen to it on the lawnmower, and that's all available, and it's all technologically done very simply and very straightforward manner. So please, if you get a chance, share it. And I guess that's a shameless request, but I would hope you would. Now, back to this Tea Party thing for a minute here. Who is the Republican Party going to pick? I mean, is Rand Paul a possible candidate? Could Rand Paul survive? Would anybody think he could do it? I don't know. I do not know. I know that I would think he would be the best candidate for the job if you're a libertarian. But I don't know if he's the guy that can win the election. And, he's made a push to the right. Cruz, Rubio, Bush, Chris Christie. I haven't heard his name is getting a little cooled down lately. Is there somebody the Tea Party could pick? Is there somebody that both sides of the fence could live with that is going to pass this, quote, litmus test? And I kind of like what the last caller said, which is a litmus test has been created by Republicans that Ronald Reagan couldn't pass. And I actually mentioned that a little earlier, that Reagan would not necessarily recognize, and the ideals of Reagan, if he's the father of the Republican Party in some respects, a modern revival of the Republican Party and the trust in government in general. What are we going to do? I mean, how are we going to pick a candidate? Is how you vote on immigration a reform? Is Boehner or Boner, whatever you want to call him, is he an ideal Republican, or is he a rhino? And what is a rhino, by the way? Is a rhino anybody who violates the trust of the Republican Party? And what is the Republican Party? Well, let's talk about this for 1 second. What is the fundamental job of a political party? And that seems to be a definition that very intelligent people disagree on. And what do I mean by that? Well, if a party is made up of, let's say a party is made up of individuals who were working together to get candidates elected or unelected. What does that mean? It means that your job is to get together if you have a commonality to support a candidate and get them elected. Okay, simple. But there are other people who say, "Oh no, the job of a political party is to make sure that people think the way we think. We've got to do better at getting people to understand why the conservative way is the right way. We're going to get people better to understand why the liberal way is the right way." And so some people view the party as apostolic organizations whose job it is to convince people what to do. Now, they're not completely in disagreement with one another, because if 100 of us get together who have a like mind, one way that we can get more votes together is go out and find other people who have a like mind and make sure they vote for our candidate. But another way to make sure that our candidate wins is to apostolatize and bring people to our way of thinking. And so it becomes problematic that as the social landscape changes, parties find themselves in a position where they're kind of grasping, because they're trying to maintain what they believe their core belief to be, and they're trying to pull the party in the direction of what they believe is the right thing, even if it means ignoring a major change in society, which is why parties seem to have these aha moments. I'm going to say that Governor Corbett's decision not to appeal the gay marriage ruling here in Pennsylvania, some people would say makes him a rhino. I would say it probably reflects the fact that the Republican Party en masse is about to abandon the gay marriage issue. In other words, if the party elite and the party leadership can get to where they want to be, they are ultimately going to abandon that position, and they are going to bring us to a position where we will be not considering that an issue in the Republican side, and therefore it's not really an issue on the Democratic side. It will become a non-social issue in politics. And why is that? For the same reason, I think we may see a change coming in how the parties break down on marijuana. Governor of Pennsylvania, again as an example, was all against any kind of medicinal marijuana or anything, even a oil extract for kids with seizures. Suddenly changed his mind and flip-flopped on the issue. Republicans are moving on certain key issues in a direction that will not make portions of the party happy. So it comes back to, how do you define it? If the job of the party is to educate people and to their way, then those in the party who believe that's the core function will become very concerned that we're abandoning an issue instead of simply educating people. So what we should have done was not bow to gay marriage, but we should have educated people and got them to better understand why marriage is between a man and a woman, and a civil union is the equivalent of a marriage, and one need not be the other. On the other hand, people in the party who are more about, okay, we want to get votes, we want to win elections and have power, they can go, well, maybe if we change one of our views on issue A, or change our platform around a little bit to better reflect what the people who identify mainly with us believe, will keep them with us. And that builds, not to say, believe mainly what we believe. Because when you want to be a big tent party, right, or a party that can accommodate a large group of people, you have to have a broad tolerance to certain views that aren't your own. And this is why this litmus test becomes problematic, because we're creating a party in the Republican Party, and the Democrats have had the same problem over the years, but we've created a party where if you don't match our litmus test on issue A, B, or C, then we don't give a damn about anything else you have to offer us, even if it's a winning election. I mean, that's ridiculous. But nonetheless, that is why how you fundamentally view the role of the party and the goal of the party can shape how you act. And partly what you've done over the years or how you feel about it has a lot to do with where you believe your success came from. And then it's overlaid with people's very strong religious and personal beliefs, where when you're being asked to compromise on a belief that doesn't require you to compromise a religious belief. So if you have no moral opposition to the drinking of alcohol and your party says we're going to be for or against it, you can roll with that decision much more easily. On the other hand, if you belong to a religion that believes that the sale of alcohol should be illegal, you're going to have a harder time accepting a party platform that is more flexible on alcohol than you are, particularly when it comes from a strong moral belief. This is why abortion tears both parties up terribly, because it cuts into an area where most people would identify their belief as being based strongly on religion, particularly those opposed. And that's my thought on that one. What's tonight's topic? Well, we've been... What's tonight's? Don Stevens wants to know what tonight's topic is. Well, Don, I know you just got here, but we were talking about, and you can listen to the podcast later to edify yourself. We were talking about Edward Snowden a little bit earlier, Patriot. That's my view. We were talking about gay marriage just briefly, but we were also talking about the Tea Party, and we were also talking about these insane sex registration laws, and how the courts have just pretended that they're not punitive, and the caller was worried, which I agree. It sets a bad precedent, because we can all agree that those things are onerous and potentially punitive, but to allow more and more civil ex post facto punishments to exist because they're de facto civil punishments and not criminal punishments, and therefore they're weighed out differently, is problematic, because it allows the government to get around this ex post facto punishment clause in the Constitution. Then again, if you're a strict constructionist, you might say, hey, I really think that that's an important aspect of the Constitution. Other people may say, well, ex post facto, that was back in a day when people just wanted to punish their political enemies. Well, how about this? How about back in a day when certain Tea Party groups were audited and or couldn't get their not-for-profit licensures established, or their donor lists were requested by the IRS, and then those people were looked into. It was very clear that the IRS was targeting Tea Party organizations, very clear that the Obama administration was using the IRS as a weapon, but ironically, so has every other president before. And it can be seen pretty handily. I posted to Facebook one time a link, so you may be able to find it if you go back through my page, which was basically a list of all the different presidents from, going back like the last 8 presidents and what they've done. Don, you're being called out here. Lucinda really wants to hear you call. But Lucinda, I want you to call too. I want to hear your sweet voice on the air, and I want to kill the rest of my hour here. This talk radio inside scoop there. Yeah, some guy is babbling. That's me right now, Avery. I'm babbling. Seriously, so getting back to this concept of what the parties do, you have to define yourself. Is my party going to adapt with the social norms, or is my political party's job to create the social norms? And I don't think one is completely the right answer or the wrong answer, but on a scale, you have to be flexible at some point. And so if 90% of the populace has come to believe that the government should not interfere with the imbibing of marijuana, then a political party that seeks to routinely get candidates elected in various elections is going to have to come into line with that view, or at least give the majority, that strong majority view, strong lip service to avoid alienating those voters. And that's precisely where we're having breakdowns in this country right now, because the Republican Party, I listen to pundits and they'll tell me, oh no, we need to do a better job of educating people on the values that we hold dear. And to some extent that's true, because that's a valid way of doing things. On the other hand, they definitely need to think a little more long-term than that. Lucinda, do I have you?
You do.
All right, good. I knew I could.
I had to call after that,
I knew I could talk you into it. Don wants the link now. I'm going to have to put that up for him. I have to do everything all at once. I have to run this show, and I have to help Don Stevens navigate the internet. I don't know.
I would gladly bow out to Don. I would love to hear him on the radio.
He's pretty funny, actually.
I'm sure. He's funny to read. I know that.
I'm getting a standby from his daughter, so maybe he's going to jump in here. But we'll just put him on hold we'll put him on hold until you and I are done. So, what do you think so far? We've hit a few topics. I got this theory about the political parties and how they need to be more careful about trying to decide: is it our job to convince everybody to believe as we do, or is it their job to represent the beliefs of the people who are their members?
Well, I mean, I think that they're there to represent the majority of the beliefs, but I don't know that that's done. I think they're going to do whatever they can to whoever pays them off the most. It seems like it is, but I mean, I think they should represent the majority of the beliefs.
Yeah,
the people that they represent.
Yeah, and I have, I have some understanding. I mean, because they're both valid concepts: growing your party and helping what you believe to be the right ideals to come in through educating the uneducated is a legitimate and important part. The being an apostle for your party, so to speak. On the other hand, when parties insist on simply hanging on to something because that's their core belief, or at least the people in control's core belief, and society as a general is drifting, on some issues you will alienate people and you may have to actually rethink your official position on something. And I think that's where the hang-up sometimes comes in. And then you overlay that a lot of these issues do have moral or religious origins. It creates a very difficult situation. I'm not sure whether the Republican Party's going to come out in the next few years. I think they're going to have to be more realistic on immigration. I don't think they have to give up their position on abortion, but I think I think Governor Corbett just signed the warrant, the death warrant, so to speak, for how the party's going to handle gay marriage and basically stay away from challenging it anymore at a political level.
Well, I think the way that that's being represented, I think all states are going to go with that. It just seems like that's going to be the norm with the gay marriage. You just said something that I was going to comment on. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I just talk and talk and talk, and sometimes I talk too long, so don't worry about that.
No, it's okay. There was something the immigration. I know that there was one thing I was thinking about earlier with the immigration and the Republican Party. I don't know that that should change. In my opinion, I was reading a little bit about whether immigrants should have driver's license, if they should be afforded driver's license or not, undocumented workers, and I just maybe I didn't read enough about it, but this just seems so unbelievable to me.
Yeah, well, I know, and it is interesting. It is interesting because what is the right choice? Now, of course, politics are politics, right? So the governor of Texas, a Republican Tea Party favorite, says what? Well, what Governor Perry says, okay, well, yeah, but we're still going to give college, in-state tuition to illegal immigrants. And people go, how could you do that? But that's because in his state, the politics are a little different. There's a much greater percentage of folks who are of recent origin and Hispanic origin who don't have a fundamental problem with that. In Arizona has like two worlds in it right now. You've got some of the strictest immigration laws in the country, but you have some counties where the population is overwhelmingly Hispanic. And the Hispanic people, I don't want to speak for them because I can't, but I can tell you that the demographics are always mixed. They don't seem to favor the current Republican view. They don't seem to favor just dropping all immigration requirements. Let me put it to you that way. But they also don't seem to favor the current Republican rhetoric on it. So notice I say rhetoric and not view. And I think that's an important distinction because it appears from some articles I've read, including one in the Wall Street Journal, that there are a lot of Hispanic individuals who would vote Republican, but they don't like the rhetoric that comes with it because people, particularly the racist members of our party, and there are a few, slide into ad hominem attacks on Hispanic people or the Hispanic peoples as if they're somehow, as if the fact that you're Hispanic is something to do with your illegal immigrant status. Now, because our wave came from Mexico, the biggest wave of illegal immigrants in recent history, now Guatemala, because they came from there, yes, there is a certain percentage, very high percentage of illegal immigrants in the United States who are of Hispanic origin or just or history. But that doesn't mean that all the lawful Hispanics who've been here for many, many moons, and many of whom have come here lawfully, are going to buy into it when you start talking basically, about these dirty Hispanics, if I paraphrase, because a lot of times illegal immigrant has just become a euphemism for racism. So that's...
And it's a shame. It's a shame that has happened. I mean, I understand what you're saying and the history behind it. But I do feel that I've read a couple articles, and it just seems like many of the people that have come here legally and have worked hard, obviously, you were talking earlier about your family. I guess that you're saying that they're stuck in a position where, they don't feel that everyone should get carte blanche and just, here you go. But they don't agree with how strict things are? Or are you saying how strict things are, or the politics? Or are you saying just because of the way things are said?
I think because of the way things are presented and talked about, because particularly if you listen to some of the rhetoric, when people...
But isn't that kind of brought up because of the other side wanting that image out there? I'm not saying it doesn't happen with the Republicans at all. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But isn't it, exemplified by the other side?
Oh, yeah. And both sides are going to game what the other side does to try to get what they want. Now,
sure.
But here's the reality, and this is interesting. The typical Hispanic voter, right, is Catholic and is not an American Catholic, and therefore is more inclined to be against abortion than an American Catholic. Even though American Catholics are theoretically against abortion, there's quite a few American Catholics who will flex on that issue, so to speak, because there's just a certain... Again, I'm going to get myself in trouble here. But historically, the American Catholic Church as a body, not as officially, has not always held the Vatican edicts with the same regard that the Latin American Church did. I'll say it that way. And as a result... Theoretically, and many Hispanics are hardworking and small business owners. There are many people who came to the United States of Hispanic extraction who would fit the mold of a Republican or a conservative Democrat than they would anything else as a voter. So I don't think the Republican Party has as much to be afraid of from Hispanic voters as and illegal immigrants becoming legal immigrants. But I do think that they risk alienating. And under George Bush, he picked up a good percentage of the Latino vote. He spoke Spanish. He was from Texas. And see, the Texans, I think, have a much more realistic view of Latinos. And so if the Tea Party, if Glenn Beck's running around Texas and the Tea Party's embracing the Texas situation, I think we have to have a more informed view of the Hispanic element in our society, make a strong distinction between a true illegal immigrant and somebody who is lawfully here or a citizen who's also not a primary English speaker or has only become an English speaker as a result of their citizenship. And so there's a great one of these undercover things where they go to restaurants and they had these Mexican guys come in who look like, they just came off a construction site almost, and basically ask for some help to order because they don't speak any English. And a number of the patrons basically were like, very mean to them because they were like, oh, these no good illegal immigrants. And you're like, well, first of all, they're actors, so they're not, you're wrong about it. You can't just look at them. The fact they didn't speak English. But more importantly and it was funny because the one couple, because there was a few couples obviously that treated him really well. And it wasn't like 80-20. I mean, it was like 10% treated him poorly.
And it's what they show on TV too,
right?
Whatever.
Right, but they were fair about it. I mean, I don't feel like they didn't show they showed as many or more people treating him well than they did poorly. But the ones that treated him poorly did it with panache, so to speak. I mean, they were just complete psychos. But the one couple was funny because they were in there and the guys are harassing. The one guy's harassing these guys, and this couple says, "What are you doing? We just got back from Mexico. We don't speak Spanish. We had to ask the whole time we were down there for instructions and help." Right. It's just funny how you have that attitude. And I say this, I listen to the rhetoric, and I'm telling you, pay careful attention. We just have to stamp it out. When somebody's speaking at a Republican event or a Tea Party event, and they start to err a little bit into, those people from Mexico, stick with the word illegal immigrant and make it clear that you're against all illegal immigrants, not just people who are Mexican or who eat tacos, because that would be, the thought that goes through the head of this type of person.
And whenever they say, the border, everyone automatically, the only border there is the one with Mexico.
Right.
And that's where their minds go.
And there's a million illegal Chinese running around the United States. But nobody cares about them.
Yeah, exactly. Because they have a different stereotype.
Right. And by the way, if you're an illegal Chinese citizen, you don't get deported because China won't take you back until the U.S. recognizes Taiwan. And since we won't recognize Taiwan, you basically get a letter from the immigration department that says someday you may have to go back to China. We'll keep you apprised, and then you can you can stay here lawfully and work and pay taxes and do everything. So interestingly, if you're an illegal who's here from a country who won't repatriate you, then we let you stay and work and do everything anyhow. But what do I know?
I would love to see the percentages, of that. And also the show you were talking about, I would love to have seen a comparison with other non-English speaking people, like Germans or how people treated them compared to, people that thought they were just off. I know it would be different, it would probably the percentages of that wouldn't be as half, it would be a lot more friendly, I believe. But
yeah. And I mean, listen, the long and short of it is the Republican Party isn't going to lose all steam because of their view of immigration. But if the Democrats are successful at portraying it, and so you just can't give them red meat. So, one of my buddies, when we were hunting, he comes over and he's like sticking the tongue back in the deer. He's like, don't take a photo with the tongue hanging out. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, those soccer moms, they'll put it on the PETA website and complain. He's like, you're supposed to not take bloody pictures. You're supposed to, take it from the side where it doesn't look blown up. And, and I was like, oh, come on. But then I thought about it and I was like, I understand what he's saying is, we're all going to put pictures of dead deer on Facebook. So take your photograph in a more tasteful manner just because we know other people will hunt and peck through them and pick out bad examples. And when we have a Republican rally or a Tea Party rally and a guy gets up there and starts to talk in a way that's mildly racist, hook him, pull him down, and boo him so that the world knows that's not tolerated. People always talk about the Muslims, and I get this Sharia law stuff on Twitter all the time. And we got to stop Sharia law and evil Muslims and evil that, and they're just a bunch of terrorists. And I always kind of chuckle about that because I don't know if you remember, but Eric Rudolph blew up. Was it Rudolph? Yeah, he blew up a couple abortion clinics and then did the Atlanta bombing during the Olympics. And
I remember that.
And he had the sympathy of a bunch of locals in the area where he lived who were right-wing fundamentalists, and they put meals out for him, and he was able to survive in the mountain for 2 years with this de facto assistance of the public. And the reality is people who were anti-abortion, I believe, did themselves a greater disservice by giving this guy any quarter whatsoever than if they had just simply said, no, he's going to starve to death or he's going to be caught because we're not going to sympathize with him at any level. That is the same thing that some Muslims and Islamics do, where they don't participate in radical Islam and they don't approve of it per se, but they won't ostracize those who do. And once somebody starts blowing up abortion clinics or hurting people, I think that we have to ostracize them. And when somebody in one of our groups is making overtly racist and or trying to raise race baiting issues, we should out them. On the other hand, we have a president who's all about classism and racism right now. So trust me, I am not giving a free pass to the Democrats. But there's only one house that we can control, and that's our own.
Yeah, I think with the racism and outing people and getting rid of them. It only works with certain people, though. It only works with whoever the masses, whoever the people are mad at or want to get out. Because, I mean, it gets back, I always go back to that one example. I mean, there's more than one, but just the one example, just of Obama saying typical white people. Just stuff like that, it only goes to a certain person or a certain group of people. And, it just depends on who you are, what color your skin is, what you can say and what you can't say. And that goes, in as far as the parties go, I mean, typically Republicans are white, I guess. Their representatives are more white than Democrats. You know what I mean? So it's going to go against one party there.
Right.
Do you see that in the media? I mean...
Well, yeah, no, you're never going to get... And here's the other problem, okay? Nothing sells better than controversy, right, or a fight.
Oh my God, so much.
And
I'm so sick of it.
My joke is you never see the headline, right? 3 million people crossed road yesterday. None of them hit. Man successfully drives car home without crashing into anything. No, the headline is man crashes into back of bus, kills himself. It's whatever horrible. What makes the news, and that goes back to this voyeuristic Schadenfreude thing that we all suffer from. Like I like the highlight reels in NASCAR to see things smashing. I don't like to watch 500 laps, but I'll watch the highlight reel. I call it the highlight reel, right? But or a hockey game. It's nothing better than the fights in a hockey game. But that's a human factor, and so what is news and what isn't news is sometimes influenced by the not normal being reportable, but it feeds back into itself because if you want to sell newspapers, you need controversy. And even though the reporters feel like they're reporting what's newsworthy and they're doing it in a, quote, fair and balanced way, I don't care whether it's Fox News or MSNBC, they want to fight. They don't want everybody to be saying kumbaya and sitting around the campfire because then there's nothing to report. So, yeah, they can definitely line it up. Plus, when they do report stuff, the details that people pick out are the ones, and we're all guilty of this, we tend to view the world the way we think it is. So if we assume that Republicans are racist, we key in on stories about Republicans being racist. And if we think Democrats are communists, we key in on that. And if we think Muslims are terrorists, when really it's also the Irish, I always used to joke, like somebody used to say, these movies, they're always portraying the terrorists as Islamic. And I'm like, well, that's because mainly they are. I mean, I'm not saying Islamics are terrorists. I'm saying most terrorists are Islamics. It's like squares and rectangles. I'm like, except occasionally you can have like, Tom Clancy book about some Irish guys trying to blow up a car in England because they also engaged in a wholesale decades of domestic terrorism over there. All religious-based, of course, and ethnic-based, but more religious than anything else. But if you want to do a realistic view of a terrorist who attacks Westerners, by the way, because if we go over, there are plenty of terrorism groups and there are plenty of religious battles that have been neither Christian nor Muslim in African nations over the years, and genocides that occurred in names of various tribal affiliations and various atrocities that have occurred in Asia for similar reasons.
Well, it goes on today. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of that.
Yeah. Amongst, Buddhists killing Buddhists. I don't know. But my point is, if you're going to portray in Western literature, like a likely terrorist, yeah, he's usually of Islamic descent. And of the few guys who've gone over to join the other side, they may not have been of Islamic descent, but they're of recent conversion before they started up their game, so to speak. So I don't know. I just feel like it's easy to stereotype. Stereotypes, though, are effective ways sometimes of trying to view the world. You can make a shorthand notation. Some of them, however, are persistently unfair and misleading. But again, part of preventing that is not playing into the stereotype. And so that's why I urge my Tea Party friends and my Republican friends, don't tolerate the racist stuff. When a guy shows up with a mildly racist T-shirt on, go make him take it off, or walk around the rally and say, hey, that sign, I understand what you're trying to say with it, but let's get a magic marker and rework a new piece of paper or cardboard here for you, so you can get your point across and not look like
You can say it. You're allowed to say it on your show, right? You don't look like an ass.
yeah, right. I was right, or that or the R word, but you can't use that one either. But yeah, no, exactly. You don't look like an ass walking around with this thing, because that's the only one they're going to film, right? I mean, that's what's going to happen. And guess what? When you show up at the Democratic group of idiots, they, who do they film? Well, if there's a naked girl protesting furs, everyone wants to take a picture of her, right? And that's my joke. I used to have this news service I did online, and we had about 5,000, 7,000, between 5,000 and 7,000 people a day who got an email that had some legal news in it. And then we could track your click-throughs on the article. So if we sent you like 20 articles, 5,000 people would open the email. Typical article might get, 200 or 300 click-throughs on it. But if you had an article that involved sex and law, and whatever it might be, like, somebody sues over breast implants, or whatever sex angle you could add to it, it would be like 1,500 click-throughs. It would be like 3 times as many. And my joke was, I don't care who you're sending this stuff out to. If there's something mildly prurient about it, it grabs attention. And so, again, that's another quirk of human nature. But I digress. So,
no, I think that's why like shows like Jerry Springer and all that kind of stuff are still on the air. I guess they are. I don't know, but because people just need to get worked up about something. And I think the internet obviously is just the biggest tool to be able to hide behind a name on a screen and say whatever you want. But listen, I had a question. I know I was thinking about this earlier. You were talking about candidates.
Yes.
I've heard the name Ben Carson thrown around. I've seen his picture. I know very, very little about him, but I just know that his name has been thrown around.
So Ben Carson is the right guy at the right time, and I don't know if that means for president, but here's what I mean. Ben Carson is a very, very skilled physician, and very, but there doesn't seem to be anybody that doubts his abilities in his field. At the same time, he decides to sort of reach out with some conservative ideals at the exact moment that the black president, because of course Ben is African American, is pushing healthcare reform down Americans' throats. His version of healthcare reform, and Ben Carson speaks out and basically says this isn't quite right. And so here's the thing, and this has been said. It's been said that when you oppose the president, you're sometimes accused of being racist, or if you just don't agree with Obama, it's because he's black. That's why you don't agree with him. And there's some validity to that idea. And I'm going to just draw kind of a analogy that's kind of an opposite analogy. But for years, Howard Stern has had a lot of racial humor on his show and said things and allowed words to be said, including the N-word, that would have caused any other disc jockey to not be on satellite radio, let alone on terrestrial radio. But because Robin Quivers, the sidekick, who's there for everything, is African American, and she would laugh at anything. The joke was he could get away with that because he had an African American there, and she was, participating in all this. Therefore, it wasn't just some rich Jewish guy making racist humor. Well, Ben Carson has an interesting. We got a call coming in here. We'll answer it and hold it here.
Oh,
we're just going to hold him for a second. So Ben Carson is an. Listen, is that you?
Hello?
Is that Don? Is that you?
Carl, you know how to operate that machinery there?
I am, although I just accidentally kicked Lucinda off. So let me just finish my question for her real quick. So what I was basically saying is...
You talked to Lucinda.
Well, we lost her, so hold on. Lucinda, what I'm saying, though, and she can still hear me, though. Lucinda, what I'm saying is Ben Carson was in a unique position because he was a black man, skilled in medicine, who could stand up to Obama on those issues. And he's continued to work his conservative angle, and he could be conceivably a president, but he comes from the outside, and I don't think the political class will ever actually let an outsider get that far in. All right, Don, how are you, my friend?
What's going on, Carl?
We're just here, we're answering questions on the air, enjoying this new extended format, trying to fill up a Sunday evening with at least some semi-interesting topics to talk about. So that's
good. I'm glad to hear that.
And I like, obviously, Lucinda was excited that you were going to come on the air because everybody enjoys your pithy wit on Facebook, and I'll describe it that way because I think you do say some pretty funny stuff.
I don't know, Carl.
And I don't mean funny in a bad way. I mean funny like apropos or just like good zingers, Plus you got your sidekick Avery to help out from time to time too, and she does a good job busting my balls in general on there.
Avery is one of the brains behind the pair of us.
Yeah. Well, So what do you think? Can the Republicans get their act together and find a candidate who can win, or are they dead in the water for another presidential election?
I think it's 4 more years of Democrats, my friend.
You know what?
Republicans are too far on the edge.
I'm not disagreeing.
Talk too much about crazy stuff.
Well, and I'm not going to disagree with you on this because I've been sort of hammering this for a while that and this is what I was talking about a little bit ago, was part of the problem is parties get confused and decide that it's their job to re-educate their organization and those around them and forget that they have to represent the changing views of the people that would make up their membership. And you can only ignore your membership for so long before they start to drift away. You can get away with it for a few election cycles, but I think the Republicans have lost any distinction when it comes to spending and taxing. They do it just as well or better than the Democrats do. They've lost any advantage they had when it comes to efficient governance. I just don't see what they have to offer that would cause a lot of people who aren't extremely dedicated to the Republican Party to be pulled across. And I have a feeling they're going to put another wacko up for president who's either Sarah Palin times 2, which is never going to win, or some mealy-mouthed billionaire who, of course, didn't win the last time.
Like Mitt Romney.
Right. Of course, he wasn't quite a billionaire, but still.
Traitor, maybe.
The Romney campaign, by the way, you got to read this book, Double Down, which is about the election. I mean, for a guy with as much money and the entire resources of the Republican Party, the Obama campaign people just wax them at every step. It's a very interesting read.
Well, Carl, they're Mormons.
Well, I can't.
Mitt Romney is a Mormon.
Right. I understand that they picked a Mormon, and some people. Can you spell idiot?
Now
you're going to get them all riled up. You know that, Don, right?
I'm sorry, but I think Mormons are crazy people.
Okay, well, we can talk about that for a second. The answer is, and that was actually one of the questions was, would the conservative wing of the Republican Party accept a Mormon as a Christian? Because the Mormons consider themselves Christians. But I can tell you, having attended some Baptist services over the years, most of what I would consider the conservative wing of the Christian church would not consider a Mormon to be likely to get into heaven. And the history of any recent religion.
No, man, the dude interpreted the Bible reading out of a hat, staring at rocks.
Right, and of course, that also opens up another interesting question, which is religions which are of recent origin always are subject to greater scrutiny than religions of more ancient origin, by the very nature of the fact that the passage of time seems to obscure a lot of the criticisms potentially, or at least they seem to be lost to antiquity. Whereas with the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses and some of the other religions of more recent origin, you obviously have a lot more information about what was going on, which makes it look a little less mystical and a little more cultish. So,
yeah, I'm no Mormon, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, I would ask to check your magic underwear, but I'll take your word for it.
Oh, buddy, I got some magic underwear, but not because of the way you think.
Your daughter listens to this show, so be careful. You don't want to offend her sensibilities, her young ears.
I don't think there's anything that could happen.
All right, Don, give us the skinny on Give us a skinny on Edward Snowden. Traitor or hero?
Personally, I see Mr. Snowden as a hero.
Okay, I agree. I think it was important that the government be outed for their level of duplicity, particularly where there's no oversight of the executive branch at this point.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that to me was, because the Law and Order, I say my Law and Order friends in the Republican Party, like, well, if you're not doing nothing wrong, you don't have nothing to hide. And I always want to be like, do you guys get it that once the government decides you're doing something wrong, that's all that matters? It isn't. The definition of a law is of words. And once they insert the wrong word in there, then you're guilty of something too. So governmental power and their ability to investigate and their ability to dig around, their ability to prosecute, their ability to secretly do things all affect you, because at some point they may decide, hey, you seem like you're mildly of Japanese extraction. You people are kind of at war with us, or maybe at war with us soon. So we're going to round you all up and put you in a camp, see, because of something.
That's already happened.
Well, I know, and it's happened.
There's precedent for that. I think that the government has no problem locking up Japanese Americans or whoever.
Right, and that's why I always say all these.
Other than the next people on the list are homosexual Americans.
Well, they've been winning some cases here in the courts. So, and the Governor Corbett said he's not going to appeal. Now, he gave some mealy-mouthed BS about why he's not going to appeal, which actually makes no sense to lawyers.
Yeah.
But
you and I both know Mr. Corbett is a one-term governor. He's not going to come back. He's going to get elected out easily.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty good chance that Governor Corbett's a one-trick pony. I agree with that.
Yeah, he's done.
And
it was a reactionary. A lot of the Tea Party people, voted for him as sort of a reaction, and look what they got, an idiot.
I'll tell you, I don't know if I may have mentioned this on the show before or not, but this just goes about politicians in general, too. It's not just Corbett, but he's out there claiming he increased education spending by $1.5 billion in this budget, okay? $700 million of that was money that's owed to the pension fund that we haven't put in for the teachers that the state was supposed to have paid in. And so basically, he's saying that his $1.5 billion is made up of almost half money that the state owed to the pension fund, and somehow this is an increased spending on education. That was just money they deferred in the past. Completely amazing.
He's not going to say no to that.
Yeah. I mean, it's great that they're putting the money in, but it's absolutely amazing to me that the public will simply accept this figure like, oh no, Corbett, because, he's very weak on that point, education, so it's no surprise that he did that. The reversal,
Republican,
right? The reversal on gay marriage is completely a bone to the Democrats because he's trying hard not to get unelected, but I just don't see it happening. I also think in October,
it's not going to happen.
In October, by the way, Kane's going to drop the Sandusky bomb on him about the quality and speed of his investigation, and that's going to become probably a fatal blow at that point. That's my guess.
It's definitely going to happen. He's not going to come back.
All right. Well, Don, I appreciate you calling in. I hope you call in on Wednesday. We'll be on Wednesday 7 to 9. We'll be on next Sunday 6 to 9. We'll make a regular caller out of you. If you want me to research and discuss a topic, feel free to shoot me something on Facebook. That goes for anybody else out there, and we'll put it up here for you, okay?
Yeah, just keep me in the loop, buddy.
All right, boss. Thanks,
man. I'm willing to talk about anything.
I know you are, but I want you to tell me what you want to talk about, and I'll get a little studied up so we can spar a little bit. And
spar? I think we're starting to be brothers.
Well, son-in-law thing,
I would not. Nothing would make me prouder.
Yeah, or your daughter sicker.
Well, that's her.
Oh my goodness! All right, my friend, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, good, Carl, buddy.
All right, yeah. I always tease Don that his daughter is going to marry me. That just really drives his daughter nuts. See, anybody that knows me would know what a bad thing that would be. Anyhow, what do I want to tell you guys? Well, let's see. We've talked about a lot tonight. We've had a few good calls. As you know, this is the long format show, so we're going to get you guys on here. We got time for one more caller if you want to sneak in, 717-916-5189, 717-916-5189. Remember, go to carlrominger.com. I post articles throughout the week, try to keep the conversation going. Most importantly, to sort of prep for the show. So that way you kind of know what we might talk about, give you some articles to look at. I also want you guys to be suggesting things for the show so that if there's something you want me to explore, I'll research it. We'll talk about it. That way, when you call in, you can pick the topic ahead of time. I'll look it up, see what I know about it, see what I think about it, give you my opinions, and then you can call in and educate me. I'm all for that. You can go to carlrominger.com to check out the articles, to get the feeds. Keep in mind, this turns into a podcast. Tonight's been broken into 2 parts, so you got the first hour and half, basically, and then the second hour and a half will be in this segment here. I look forward to getting your feedback on the show, and I'm honored that you've listened to me. And if you get a chance, again, just share this. When you go to the Spreaker application, it's really simple to share it with your friends. Doing that will quickly blossom this show out, and then once we have enough listeners, I'll be able to charge money for advertising, and then it'll be a real going concern. And then I can get somebody in here, maybe even hire some talent, because we don't have any talent in the show right now, and get this thing up and running in a slightly more professional format. And of course, if you have, and this is open to anybody out there, if you have a major broadcast outlet of any sort, a radio station or something that wants to simulcast this show or broadcast reruns, we are always open to that. So we're happy to give you permission, which we'll do in writing, for rights management issues. And if you notice during the show right now, we're not hitting you up with anything that's going to cost you any money in rights management. We're working on getting some custom music and some trailers done that will be wholly % owned. Once we do that, we'll have bumpers and all that other cool stuff. And again, if you want to be a guest on the show, in other words, if you want to plan on calling in or us calling you because you want to talk about something specific or talk about your business or your book or your brochure or your weird egalitarian views, we'll be happy to do that. Okay, this is Carl Rominger. You've been listening to The Carl Rominger Show. Go to carlrominger.com. We're on every Wednesday from 7 to 9 and every Sunday from 6 to 9. Thank you for being such a kind audience. God bless.